How did the P-Rail come about?
That was about as simple as it could sound, right? I mean, it was like I wanted a, and I'd heard people saying, like, man, I wish I had a humbucker that you could split to a P90. And there had been previous attempts at things where they have just two little magnets next to the pole pieces on one of the humbucker coils, and then the other coil would be something else, like an Alnico rod or something of that nature. And I was like, you can fit a P90 coil in there. I mean, we do that with singles, like humbucker-sized P90s. Oftentimes, those are a compromise, but for no other reason than the company who designs those, they don't take advantage of the full real estate, so they sort of underwind it, and then, you just get what you get. But I started winding those prototypes and even cobbling together some prototypes where you take an existing like vintage P90 and you say, okay, if that's the wind that's on this coil, do I have that much room? What can I do? Shaving some things off. And so the geometry was there. I was able to fit it. And then the secondary, issues were things like the P90 is usually under a big, like a fairly thick plastic cover, which means the pole pieces are raised up significantly from the top of the bobbin. If you looked at something like the Fat Cat that Duncan was making, it's just a humbucker. Well, it was a P90 bobbin. I should take that back, but it's like a how do I put it? Sort of the humbucker geometry where the pole pieces are a little bit down inside the bobbin instead of lifted up on the bobbin. And so there's a height disparity there. So I managed the P90 bobbin against the rail bobbin in such a way that the rail bobbin was up, in its relationship to the P90. P90 screws still stuck out of the top of the bobbin. Yep. In a way that was correct for a P90. So that's about the, and then of course I didn't put a cover on it. It's just tape wrapped, which means that depending on the wire gauge, you could really just get the maximum amount of turns on that, in a bloated coil without having it be stuck, that wouldn't fit in a mounting ring, or that, you couldn't drop a cover on top of it. And that was something that happened with the Fat Cat. It's a different wire gauge. It's not, they read out like in the 8K range, and so it's never, the Fat Cat always struck me as an underwound P90. They didn't take advantage of all the space, and so you put all that stuff together. I was like, this can be done, and I filed some intellectual property stuff and talked to them about licensing it, like I said, and it all played out. Here I am. I wouldn't be here talking to you probably if it wasn't for that. That's a origin point.
So I have a follow-up question to that one. Was
Please.
Your intention always to go to Seymour Duncan for this, or did you shop around for other companies to work with?
Seymour Duncan was the first place I went, and it was the most correct place. I mean, I could have made pickups by myself and been just another, laundry list of independent pickup makers making pickups in their house or in a small shop or something of that nature. What I wanted for that product was, it's nerdy on its face. It's a little complicated. You say, oh, we're going to split this, and and we know that there's for the percentage of people who play guitar, there's a very small percentage who change pickups. And then of that subset, now you're into the people who care about things like coil splits and series and parallel and other fancy wiring, instead of just saying, I had the Gibson pickup and now I put the Slash pickup in it, right? Mm-hmm. And so what I wanted, or what I needed for that pickup, was to get some widespread, acceptance, some buy-in, right, from the consumer. It would have been a small little thing if I had just done it, in my shop and released a small amount of pickups. And in fact, there was about 60-40 resistance even among people at Seymour Duncan for what I had wanted to put forth, which was, we're releasing this as a stock product. It's going to be reasonably priced, and we're going to tell the world this is a great thing, and it's accessible to all of you. And if all you do is just split it to a P90 with a push-pull, you got twice as much of a pickup than you had in the first place. If you go extra nerdy with a triple shot mounting ring or 2 push-pulls, now you have single coil sounds, and you have series, and you have parallel, and all this stuff. But the main thing, the big payoff was it was a great sounding P90 in a humbucker box, as well as the humbucker sound. And so the resistance I got was I had people saying, like, well, we should just release this through the custom shop, get it out there for a few years, see what the response is, and if it's really popular, then we transition it over to the production floor. And I said, if you do that, it's dead, because you just now narrowly focus your marketing towards the nerd. Of course, it goes without saying, all 3 of us probably use the term nerd affectionately, right? This is not a pejorative. Yeah. And so you narrow. Yeah, I'm not trying to get called out, by a group. But so that's what I said is like, if you do that, it's always going to be a niche, product. And we were looking at sales forecasts, and again, I don't share, nor should I share like confidential numbers or things like that. But what I can tell you is, we had a sales projection of X, right? And the X was not that many. I mean, it was decent, but we assumed it might lay in the place of like, I don't know. I mean, definitely more sales than something like a Stag Mag, so maybe in the range of Fat Cats, something of that nature. And based on that, and based on the fact that ESP agreed to put in a potbelly guitar, so we knew we had some sales up front, we had this number, this X number. And we were like, I would say 5 times that amount the first year when it released. Whoa. So, wow. Yeah. So, and that's, again, without being specific, it's in the neighborhood of thousands. So the sales on the pickup instantly validated the idea, that it's something that was meant to be, you want to aim it right down the center. You want to give it a big shotgun blast, because I thought more people would be interested in what it did than they were thinking, just by saying, well, for the people, there's this many people that want a Fat Cat, and then there's this many people that want a Stag Mag. Those are the people who wish they had a pickup that split to a real single coil. And so let's try to extrapolate the data and figure out how many people are going to want P-Rails. And like I said, it was 5 times that, and then it had had a very long tail. So it was just it was still in the thousands years and years later. It spent a lot of time, if it still is, I don't even know because I don't have data right now, but it spent a lot of time in what they would call their top 20. So yeah, that was great.
What would be interesting is, did this initial resistance by certain people at Seymour Duncan come from the fact that it is more complex to build the P-Rail, or was it just that they were like, okay, this is a great concept, but we don't see the mass market for it?
Correct. It's more the latter, and the former was overcome. It was something we could overcome. I had already built them, so I knew how to navigate the production on it. And there are unique things about it, like the top, of course, had to be tooled up. But not only tooled up, it was, it's tooled up with the recess in it for the blade, for the rail coil, to be taller than the P90. Under the magnet was, a spacer, type of thing. Just so there's little things in there that have to, for all of the alignment, for everything to come together. But then at the end of the process, there's glue involved. You glue, the top is glued on it and things like that. And that, generated some funny, moments as well. Certain people, engineers like, well, you can't use this. I want to use this glue and this, that, things of that nature. And, but the manufacturing part was not that difficult, to overcome.